Mbappe had an interview the other day, and what he said has stirred up a bit of a storm online. In this video, we're going to look at how footballers are treated by many sports fans by analysing how fans reacted to what Mbappe said. We will also analyse how social media can twist exactly what a player said, oftentimes making the fans' reaction even worse, as it's all been taken out of context. In this video, we're deep diving into the toxic culture around football and sports as a whole. We're going to be going through comments on the post and discussing them. We're using this specific quote from Mbappe, but let me be clear. I'm not only speaking about this specific quote from Mbappe, I'm speaking on behalf of any sports person who even mentions the tiniest bit of struggle or hardship. This Mbappe statement is simply an example. Firstly, let's go through the exact post where I found this statement.
Kylian Mbappe reveals the harsh realities behind professional football, explaining that the pressure, scrutiny, and demands of the sport are so intense that he wouldn't want his own child to experience them. Mbappe: I hope to have a son who detests football. If I didn't have this passion, the world of football would have disgusted me a long time ago. I would never advise my child to step foot in the football world. His words show that despite his incredible success, Mbappe is fully aware of the mental and emotional toll of top-level football, a side us fans rarely see. It's definitely a reminder of the sacrifices behind the fame, glory, and records.
Okay, so a few things stood out to me here, and I want to go through the actual direct translation first before we get into analysing the comments, just to educate you on how media, especially when translated, can make something seem way more hostile.
Rule 1. Take translations with a grain of salt. 1. I hope to have a son who detests football.
In English language, the word detest is so strong. It's even more than hate. So this straight away shocked me. However, looking deeper into this, Mbappe used the word
détester,
in French, which does translate to detest or hate, but in France, the word is thrown around a lot more loosely. It's not as deep as an English person saying they detest something.
2. If I didn't have the passion, the world of football would have disgusted me a long time ago.
That's something you would very rarely hear. Again, the language. Disgust is really strong. But again, the direct translation
dégoût,
in France, again, is thrown around much more loosely. And it's not exactly the same as an English person saying they're disgusted. If Mbappe did say the English version of detest and disgust, I fully understand why people would be riled up a little bit more. But we will go into that whole conversation soon.
Rule number 2. Quotes and statements are usually watered down.
The whole interview was much longer than this statement. Let's cover the same two sentences we covered earlier in the real context and see how our perception changes.
1. I hope to have a son who detests football. And if I didn't have the passion, the world of football would have disgusted me a long time ago.
In context,
I like to say that people who go to the stadium are lucky to only come and see a show and not know what's going on behind the scenes. Honestly, if I didn't have this passion, the football world would have disgusted me a long time ago. That's the world we live in, and we can't change it. I will never advise a child of mine to step into the football world.
So in this statement, it seems much more like he's just looking out for his future child, due to the fact of how brutal the dark side of football is, that the fans don't see. He's saying nobody really understands what it's like behind the money and the prestige of being a footballer. To him, it disgusts him behind the scenes. Stuff we can only imagine. And he wouldn't want his child to go through that. Now, how different is that all in context? Opposed to a simple line saying, I hope my son detests football. Statements like this leave the rest up to your imagination. Maybe it makes you think he's ungrateful and doesn't know how lucky he is. But when you see the full context, it's much less hostile. And it brings you into his world a little bit more. So we've covered rule number 2, quotes and statements are usually watered down. So next time you read something online, and this isn't just for sports by the way, this is applicable to any media that you read. Before letting emotions take hold of you and running away with them, try and ground yourself and first ask, is this the full context here? What's the point in reacting to something that isn't the full context? It just creates misunderstanding and unnecessary conflict.
Toxic culture in sport.
Okay, this is the main reason I wanted to make this video. Professionals in sports, and especially footballers, are treated differently than most people in society. Maybe the best way to say it, treated like a robot. People forget there is actually a human being underneath the jersey they wear and underneath the big paychecks that they get. We're going to go over some comments such as this, and this. And this isn't to name and shame or to be on Mbappe's side. This is simply to show the unfairness in how these players are spoken to. And I'll explain exactly why it's unfair in a moment. But first, let's look at some of the comments under the post with Mbappe's quote and see what patterns lie underneath the messages.
1. Comments regarding money.
When I read through the comments, I realised how much they reflect on a toxic side of the football culture. I just want to read some out before I give my opinion on this topic, explaining why it's unfair, and show that footballers, even someone like Mbappe, can still suffer or have hardships, just in different ways.
Whilst he's sat on $500,000 a week, grow up, son. Oh, come off it. Let's trade struggles then. It's just that I'm not a multimillionaire and have every privilege in life. He should go see how people struggle hard just to feed their kids, not knowing if they will manage it the next time. Give me your money and let me worry about that. That's bull. From the moment you sign, even if you don't play at all, I take the money and become rich from 20 nowadays.
Now, let's be real. Money is one of the most stressful things in life. When you don't have enough, it makes everything harder. I grew up broke and I've been broke as an adult. After playing pro in England, struggling with heart complications without a club, I found myself working night shifts, living heavy parcels on and off a conveyor belt for 8 to 10 hours straight for next to nothing, whilst my son had literally just been born. After then moving abroad, I was trying to raise a child whilst making €600 a month, coaching on the weekdays and weekends. Even when I was younger, my friends used to pay for my cinema ticket or the cinema snacks because I didn't have the money. So I want to be clear. I empathize with those comments and I can literally feel the struggle coming through the words. But here's where it gets toxic. When money is your biggest stress, it can feel like it's the only problem in the world. So when that person then sees someone like Mbappe, who has the thing they desperately need, money and an abundance of it too, it's easy to think, if I had what he had, my life would be perfect. He has no right to moan and cry. I'm the real one suffering. But here's the problem. Mbappe's life isn't your life. He doesn't live in your body. He's a separate human being with his own challenges. Just because he's not struggling to pay the rent doesn't mean his struggles don't exist. And one of the meanest things we can do as people is to discredit someone else's suffering. Think about it like this. Imagine you tell someone you're struggling with money, maybe you're stressed and can't sleep, and instead of empathy, they say, at least you have a job, quit moaning. How would that feel? That's exactly what people do to players. Projecting your problems onto another person doesn't solve anything. It just creates bitterness and nobody wins. Imagine if we lived in a society where everybody reacted like that comment section. Nobody would share their struggles. People would suffer in silence and even feel guilty for suffering. Unless your struggles fall into a certain category. Don't even bother mentioning them, otherwise will make you feel even worse for doing so. I think fans and the media need to respect players' struggles more. Most people can't even imagine what the dark sides of football are like, and I've seen plenty of it. So if it's not money, what are some of the problems Mbappe could possibly be facing? Extreme pressure. Millions of people judging your performance, every interview, every word. What do you truly think that would be like? No privacy. He can't walk down the street without being filmed. He can't go to a nightclub with his mates and make a fool of himself like most people can. And even his whole family now will be in the spotlight. Not to mention mental health stress, all the performance anxiety, and being treated like an object. Different problems, but they're still real. Mental health is a big thing in sports recently. Foundations like the Professional Footballers Association are trying to build more of a culture where players who are struggling mentally speak out more. Well, until the culture changes, That's not gonna happen. No wonder players don't speak up. The culture doesn't validate their problems. It only makes them feel bad for having the audacity to tell us in the first place. So yes, Mbappe doesn't have to worry about paying the bills, but money doesn't cancel out stress. It just changes the type of stress you have to deal with, especially when you're a professional footballer. When fans dismiss his feelings just because he earns more, it creates a toxic cycle. Everyone's problems are real to them. The healthier football culture or sports culture is one where we can recognize our own struggles, but also respect others. Even the superstars have struggles of their own. It's not a competition, they are human just like the rest of us. So with this knowledge now, and hopefully you've come to understand more. So if you were agreeing with any of the comments before,
Whilst he sat on $500,000 a week, grow up, son.
what that line actually means is because he earns X amount of money, he doesn't have the right to feel what he feels. That's unfair. Money doesn't cancel out other problems, and money isn't the only stress someone can feel. Even though when you have money problems, that statement doesn't feel true. For these top players, money is far from a problem. But with their status, many problems can arise that the general public have no idea about.
Oh, come off it. Let's trade struggles then. I'm not a multimillionaire with every privilege in life.
This is zero logic. Let's trade struggles. Sounds tidy, but it's impossible in real life. You can't keep your life and magically swap one problem for another. If you took his bank balance, you'd also have to take his fame, his lack of privacy, the pressure, the expectations, his whole life, his upbringing, his sacrifices along the way. You wouldn't be you anymore. You'd literally be Mbappe. Therefore, your exact struggles wouldn't exist. Two different people, two different lives. The comparison breaks down immediately.
He should go see how people struggle hard just to feed their kids.
This one's painful to read because it's real for so many people. I'm not dismissing that pain at all, but using the suffering to instantly cancel someone else's right to feel, that's not constructive. Two truths can coexist. Poverty is real, and a player can be struggling in other ways.
Give me your money and let me worry about that.
Okay, again, if your point is money solves everything, you also inherit the rest of Mbappe's life. Money didn't just magically fall from the sky and land on Mbappe's lap. He sacrificed literally his whole life to get where he is. You'd have to be a top striker for Real Madrid, which for sure isn't a chill lifestyle. The scrutiny is relentless, your mistakes are magnified, and privacy disappears. Money unlocks new problems. It doesn't erase them. People take the money side of it and think, with that amount of money, I'd never work ever again. I'd do this and I'd do that. But a footballer's life isn't like that. Money isn't even on somebody's mind like Mbappe. And it wouldn't have even been on his mind most likely when he first started playing it, just for the love of it. He didn't build the football world himself, creating all the rules, saying the top players have to earn X amount of money. He's just found himself at the top of the football world. So he's not to blame. Imagine a world where everyone reacted like these comments. Nobody would say they're struggling. People would suffer in silence and feel guilty for admitting pain. That's the culture we're feeding when we dismiss other people's pain.
2. Comments regarding mindset.
Now we have already covered the underlying issue in all of these toxic comments, regardless of what they are specifically talking about. The underlying issue is you're not allowed to struggle. I don't validate your struggle. If anything, I'm annoyed that you've shared it because I'm struggling more. So let's read a few more comments while dissecting why they're toxic.
Too soft, mate. Each person in life goes on with their struggles on a day-to-day basis. Practice gratitude and you'll have a much better outlook on life.
Imagine you telling someone a problem or a hardship that you've had, and their first reply to you is, too soft, mate. He goes on to say everyone struggles day to day, and the solution is gratitude. Gratitude does help for sure, and it's a great practice, but all we want as humans is someone to listen, understand, and validate our problems. This comment doesn't give that.
Spoiled brat.
Speaks for itself. Again, someone who must be having a hard time and sees Mbappe's life as a godsend compared to theirs. Even if it is, Mbappe is still allowed to feel what he feels.
Sounds like ungratefulness to me.
No situation is perfect. Mbappe stated the dark side of the game is brutal. This is a fact. No matter how good the good sides are, we're also allowed to talk about the hard sides. Finally, I'd love to finish with this comment, and this gave me a ray of hope. However, it could have been written a little more eloquently.
Most of this moronic comment section is providing him right. Football fans are downright toxic these days. It's the same with the media.
When they say proving him right, they are referencing Mbappe talking about the dark side of the game in his statement. One of them is toxic fans and media invalidating any possible hardship a player may face. The world in general is a bizarre place at the moment. Everywhere I look, I see one pattern: lack of empathy, lack of validation for other people's feelings, and truly listening to them. The reason being, no one feels understood or listened to, which then creates a cycle of not listening to others. For me, the football world, the fans, the media need to hold higher standards towards the players. Players are humans. If you spend your weekends watching games, being entertained, cheering when you see somebody score a goal, have the respect to then treat those entertainers as human beings also. Before you judge and quote online, think, do I have the full context here? Secondly, if it's in another language and translated, are the translated words accurate? And lastly, the most important one, am I projecting my own problems onto someone else and taking away their human right to feel struggle? If you're someone struggling or someone who leaves comments such as these, the ones that we've covered today, if deep down you feel no one listens to you or understands you, become the person you wish you had and lead by example. Validating other people's struggles even if you can't relate. What goes around comes around. Let's stop comparing pain and start listening, because whether you're Mbappe or an ordinary fan, the need for empathy is the same. Let me know what you think is wrong with the culture of sport or anything you disagree with in this video, because I think conversations about this need to be had more. Not arguments, but conversations. Most of the people watching this video will be young aspiring ballers who are on their way to becoming future Mbappes. The more current footballers / sports people speak about the dark side of sport and are allowed to by the culture of fans, the more the next generation of players can prepare and also make a change.